Welcome to Extraterrestrial Reality. Today we're going to talk about a different theory with regards to the ongoing cover-up and why governments are so afraid to talk about the reality that there is a non-human intelligent presence here on Earth operating, doing something, whatever, I don't know, but they're here and they don't want to talk about it. Now, of course, I think that the biggest reason I always say this is that they're just reverse engineering these things, these recovered crafts, and they don't want to tell anyone about it because it's all about power and who has the best technology, right? And that's one of the reasons. Well, there could be more to this than just that. One of the things that could be happening here now, I guess it was probably, in March I did a show about asking the question on whether militaries of the world are totally cucked by the alien presence, by their technology. And I believe that to be true. I think that they see the technology on display over the decades and they just feel like, wow, this is just way above us and there's nothing we can do about it. So that's one of the reasons they don't want to talk about it. But, one of the other things they don't like to talk about is the aliens themselves. You don't really hear much about it. In fact, a lot of the articles, like Christopher Sharp, I always give him credit for with Liberation Times. He has his, like I always say, he has his fingers on the pulse of what's going on in Washington more so than probably anybody else right now. He does a lot of great articles for Liberation Times, and he actually published an article this week that talks about the aliens themselves, and that's something he actually admitted himself that he doesn't usually do that. But I'm going to go through that article a little bit. It just shows that they have to be aware of these creatures, and that in itself is probably the biggest reason. It's the beings. It's always the beings to me. It comes down to it's beyond the technology. It's just the fact that there's creatures here among us, right, that are just they're not human, and they abduct people, they scare people, they do whatever they want, and there's nothing that any military could do about it. The police won't be able to stop them. There's nothing anyone can do about it, and that's one of the reasons why they don't want to talk about UFOs and aliens. They don't want to admit it because of this. This is the scariest part. The scariest part of all of this it comes down to the beings. We don't know which ones are good or which ones are bad. I mean, they probably don't know. They have no idea what's going on. And actually, his article here pretty much says that. And anyway, it starts off with, the headline reads, Hidden Factions, Conflicting Narratives, and Dark Truths Behind Alleged Non-Human Species on Earth. And it talks about a case that happened in 2009. And it says here, it was a calm summer morning on the Chalk Downs south of Avebury, England, where Silbury Hill, Stonehenge, and other ancient monuments still brood over the landscape. On 6 July 2009, an off-duty Wiltshire police sergeant was driving west along the A4 past Silbury Hill, a 129-foot prehistoric chalk mound and World Heritage Landmark, when three figures in white coveralls appeared in a field opposite. Thinking they were forensic officers, he braked hard, climbed out, and walked toward them. The trio were crouched over the barley beside the so-called Mayan crop circle, an imprint that case investigator Andy Russell later told Liberation Times was definitely man-made. Andy Russell recounts what happened next, according to the police sergeant, who has kept his identity secret to this day. And this is what Andy Russell said about this police sergeant's encounter with these three beings. The three beings, seemed to be inspecting the crop. When he got to the edge of the field, he heard what he believed to be a sound not dissimilar to static electricity. This crackling noise seemed to be running through the field, and the crop was moving gently close to where the noise was moving. He felt the hair on his arms and back of his neck raise up. He shouted to the figures, who at first ignored him, not glancing at him. When he tried to enter the field, they looked up and began running. He said, "They ran faster than any man I have ever seen. I'm no slouch, but they were moving so fast. I looked away for a second, and when I looked back, they were gone. I then got scared. The noise was still around, but I got an uneasy feeling and headed for the car. For the rest of the day, I had a pounding headache. I could not shift." So he had a headache after all of this incident for reasons unknown. The story proved newsworthy enough that the Daily Telegraph, a UK broadsheet not known for indulging in tales, ran the story, giving the incident an unexpected stamp of mainstream credibility. Russell told Liberation Times that similar encounters with mysterious Nordic-looking figures have also been reported across Wiltshire, particularly in the countryside around Warminster. The witness's credibility was underscored by coverage in a mainstream broad street, even though no physical UAP were reported in this particular incident. And then it goes on. to say that, but encounters featuring tall Nordic-looking entities and a wider menagerie of purported advanced non-human species have been woven into the UAP narrative ever since the 1947 Roswell crash, where witnesses and insiders speaking to Liberation Times claimed that non-human bodies were recovered along with 2 downed craft. And then it talks about he talks about the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2023, and where it defined what UAP means. It means an airborne objects that are not immediately identifiable, transmedium objects or devices, and submerged objects or devices that are not immediately identifiable, and so on and so forth. It was just, again, the government's talking about these things in bills in their National Defense Authorization Act. They're somewhat coming clean. They're acknowledging that, yeah, these craft could move. They're transmedium craft. They could move in water. They could move in air. They could move in space. They could do whatever they want, apparently. And anyway, also talking about some of the comments made by the current CIA director, John Ratcliffe, who said in 2023 that the objects that demonstrate technologies that seem to defy the law of physics and capabilities that we don't have as the world's superpower, our role in the federal government is to provide for the common defense, and we can't do that if someone else has technologies that are better than what we have. And then, of course, he talked about the UAP Disclosure Act and some of the language contained within that, and that was, something that was discussed by some of the top elected officials in the Senate, Mike Rounds and Chuck Schumer. And in that language, it talked about any sentient non-human intelligence. I gave a definition for non-human intelligence. I said any sentient, intelligent, non-human life form, regardless of nature or ultimate origin, that may be presumed responsible for UAP or of which the federal government has become aware. So, we're getting there. Like, we're slowly getting there. They're trying to tell people something here, but they can't. If they do it all too quick, it's going to be too much. They're trying to do this over a slow period of time. I don't know if it matters or not. I guess the people on the top, the people that are responsible for this slow disclosure effort, this is what they determined that we got to do this slowly. That's why they don't talk about things like the Las Vegas alien incident, because that's too much for the public. I think that's just my opinion. Doesn't make me right. And he also talked about some of the things that David Grush told Congress under oath with regards to reverse engineering recovered non-human craft and biologics that were retrieved from these crash sites. But most interesting, I thought, was this. Dr. Eric Davis just last month, and he writes, the topic resurfaced in May 2025 when Dr. Eric W. Davis, a theoretical physicist, former Pentagon contractor, and propulsion researcher, told lawmakers during a multi-panel event that crews of some UAP, according to his own sources, include Nordic, reptilian, gray, and insectoid beings. So, there you go. I mean, this is Dr. Eric Davis is saying this during this recent meeting he had with some people in Congress. The comment here, according to Sharp, drew nervous laughter and scant mainstream coverage. That's true. But I thought this was even more interesting to me. A similar note of corroboration came from retired Rear Admiral Tim Gallaudet, an oceanographer, formerly acting administrator of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA, and former U.S. Navy deputy oceanographer, who told Liberation Times in April 2024, I know from people I trust who have had access to some of these programs that different types of non-human intelligence are visiting us, and we still don't understand their intentions. So basically, that's the problem. They don't understand their intentions. After all of these decades, they still don't understand their intentions. So that is the problem with disclosure. Once you tell the truth, then people are going to ask, okay, what are they here for? What do they want? And you're not going to have an answer. That's what it seems to be. That's what seems to be the case. The article continues here. It says, other sources speaking on condition of anonymity told Liberation Times that, unsettling though it sounds, certain non-human intelligences appear to function as a control system superimposed on humanity while simultaneously cutting their own technology deals with individual governments. Now, I still have a problem with that. I need to see proof of that before I start believing. You hear these stories over the decades about the government's making deals with aliens, and I just have problem believing that. I don't believe that these aliens would need to make a deal with anybody. Why would they? I mean, if they're that much more advanced than we are, why would they need to sit down and, we make a deal with you, Mr. President? I don't believe that. It's hard for me to believe. But that's what some people are saying. Well, I'll believe it when I see it. And here's another paragraph. It says, this paragraph here, it says, one insider went further, claiming that rival factions exist which compete even within the same species, adding that some are benevolent, some malevolent, and others somewhere in between. One theory holds that nations serve as proxies in conflicts between factions. Yeah, we just don't know. I mean, which are some good, some bad? We don't know what's going on, and I don't think they know what's going on. In fact, I think the problem that they have is this. This is the biggest issue, maybe, possibly, in this theory that I'm going to talk about right now. The biggest problem would be the creatures themselves, that they're already here, spread out amongst us. We don't even know. Some of them are walking amongst us right now. They look human, but they're not, and they're here for what purpose? We have no idea. And it seems to me that during the 1960s, I think a lot of people in the government were starting to realize, wait, this is way beyond our control here, because there's actually apparent agents that are posing as government officials, and we had nothing to do with approaching people who saw UFOs or who had an alien encounters, right? Approaching them, telling them they're from the government, and they have no idea about it. In fact, there was a memo that was sent out on March 1st, 1967. I'm going to pull it up on the screen right now. And this was written by Hewitt Wheelis, a lieutenant general with the United States Air Force. And it was with regard to impersonations of Air Force officers. Information not verifiable has reached headquarters of the United States Air Force that persons claiming to represent the Air Force or other defense establishments have contacted citizens who have sighted UFOs. In one reported case, an individual in civilian clothes who represented himself as a member of NORAD demanded and received photos belonging to a private citizen. In another, a person in an Air Force uniform approached local police and other citizens who had sighted a UFO, assembled them in a schoolroom and told them that they did not see what they thought they saw and that they should not talk to anyone about the sighting. All military and civilian personnel, and particularly information officers and UFO investigating officers who hear of such reports, should immediately notify the local OSI offices. OSI meaning the Office of Special Investigations for the Air Force. So in the 1960s, to me, it looks like some people in the military, in the United States Air Force, are thinking, wait a minute, there's people saying that we're agents from our organization are showing up and telling them, hey, don't do this, don't do that, scaring them and threatening them sometimes, stealing stuff from them. And in the first one he was talking about, that was with relation to Rex Heftlin, who in 1965 in Orange County, California, took 3 famous pictures of a flying saucer. Right? He was out checking telephone. He was a highway maintenance guy, and he was out checking telephone poles and he or signs or something. I can't remember exactly, but he was out there doing something as a highway maintenance worker, and he saw this flying saucer, and he took pictures of it. And then some guy showed up at his house claiming he was Air Force official from NORAD, and he wanted to borrow the pictures, but he never returned them. But they did get returned, like in the 1990s, sometime, a few years before Rex Heftlin passed away. He received a strange phone call from somebody telling him to check his mailbox, and he went outside, and there was a package in there, and the photos that were stolen back in the 1960s were returned. And then he was visited again. He was visited again by other people after in the 60s, after the NORAD incident with the phony NORAD official. After that happened, then 2 other guys showed up at his house. And here's from Jenny Randall's book here, The Truth Behind Men in Black. Heftlin says that during this 1967 visit, 2 men arrived in a dark car with a peculiar violet glow coming from behind its darkened windows. Someone appeared to be seated within, but it was not possible to make out any details. That person remained in the car whilst 2 Air Force uniformed intelligence officers got out and asked to interview Heftlin. The 2 airmen repeatedly asked odd questions, such as what the cameraman thought of then recent stories about ships and aircraft vanishing amidst the so-called Bermuda Triangle. Heftlin claims that some kind of electrical equipment must have been brought into the house by the 2 men because his radio set, which had been left on in the background during the interview, was emitting strange popping sounds throughout. It had not done this before and did not do so again after the men left. Their demeanor was threatening, but they made no actual demands of him. So in light of that, of his initial experience with the bogus man from NORAD, Heftlin insisted on taking the full names and ranks of these 2 intelligence officers. Nonetheless, the United States Air Force later denied sending anyone to see Heftlin, and when ufologists checked government records, no officers of the names given were listed. So who the hell were those guys that showed up then? So you have to wonder: is the government afraid of what's going on? They can't do anything about it because these aliens, when these things happen, right, they'll send out their agents to try to cover these things up because the aliens themselves, they don't want anyone knowing what's going on here. They just don't. And I'm going to get into something. I've recently been contacted by somebody, and I really can't get into this yet because I'm still checking it out. I don't know if it's real or not. But this person was claiming to have had a Men in Black encounter and similar things like this where you can't take the cell phones. Nothing works around these guys when they show up, and they look really funny on top of it. But I'm still checking into that story. I don't want to provide a bogus story. I'm still trying to verify that this is really happening. Anyway, here's another article. This was written in 2022 by Nick Redfern, and the headline reads, "Has the United States government quietly followed the sinister activities of the real Men in Black?" And the article begins, it says, "Well, the answer to the question above is a definitive yes. The United States government may not have much understanding of who the Men in Black really are, but the military and various agencies have certainly followed the activities of the MIB, as you will see now. Thanks to the phenomenally successful Men in Black movie franchise, there can be very few people who have not heard of the sinister MIB. In the movies starring Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones, the MIB are employed by a secret government body that is dedicated to wiping out hostile aliens on Earth. The reality of the Men in Black, however, is very different. Unlike their movie counterparts, the real MIB are described as looking definitely non-human. Their skin is extremely pale, they have large bulging eyes, they are extremely skinny and often very tall. In other words, they don't even look like regular people. This has given rise to the theory that the MIB may be alien-human hybrids, possibly even supernatural entities. Not only that, there is strong evidence that suggests the United States government has secretly investigated the MIB phenomenon to try and figure out who or what the Men in Black are. And thanks to the United States Freedom of Information Act legislation, we now have in our possession a number of official, previously secret U.S. military documents that confirm those secret investigations that were clearly covered up at the time the government was doing its utmost to solve the mysterious riddle of who these strange characters were. Now, to the next part, John Keel was not only the author of the acclaimed book The Mothman Prophecies, he was also someone who dug very deeply into the matter of the MIB, who they were and where they came from. In February of 1967, Keel had the opportunity to speak with Colonel George P. Freeman. Freeman of the United States Air Force made the following written statement about the MIB. Keel took careful note of it, and this was the statement. "Mysterious men dressed in Air Force uniforms or bearing impressive credentials from government agencies have been silencing UFO witnesses. We have checked a number of these cases, and these men are not connected to the Air Force in any way. We haven't been able to find out anything about these men. By posing as Air Force officers and government agents, they are committing a federal offense. We would sure like to catch one. Unfortunately, the trail is always too cold by the time we hear about these cases, but we are still trying." And then he goes on to talk about the memo that I just talked about with regards to what Lieutenant General Hewitt Wheelis of the United States Air Force had wrote in 1967. You wonder if these beings are similar to what was described by David M. Jacobs in his book Walking Among Us. He has a table in here describing these the various different kinds of aliens that abduct people or are involved in alien abductions. One of them is classified as humanoid hybrids, human stage, advanced, and security hybrids. Basically, security hybrids. They're hybrids. They're half alien, half human, but they serve as security to make sure that people don't that abductees, nothing is ever learned by any. They basically provide security for the abduction process. That's basically what they're doing. They're physically indistinguishable from humans. They're 5'6" to 5 feet 6 inches to 5 feet 10 inches tall. They're single-minded in their functions. They're all male all the time, it seems. Advanced hybrids are male and female. They eat through their mouths, and they communicate both telepathically and verbally. Some of their functions include they protect hybrids. Hybrids are the hybrids that you would not be able to. There's nothing indistinguishable with them when it comes to. You would not be able to indistinguish them from other humans if you saw one, according to Jacobs. So they protect the hybrids who are living on Earth, and they make sure there are no security breaches. They help hybrids integrate into society. They ensure abductee secrecy. The advanced hybrids come to Earth to obtain housing for hybrids and independents. They help obtain materials for furnishing apartments. They help train abductees for future tasks, and they may live on Earth. And these are probably the kinds of people, I would imagine, they seem that they might fit the Men in Black description. That's who they might be, these security hybrids that David M. Jacobs was talking about. And here's what I think. This is just a theory, doesn't make me right. I think what's possible here is that militaries are afraid of this. They have, there's nothing they could do about it. So how could they talk about the truth of the truth about the phenomenon itself? They can't. That's one of the big problems. Now, of course, I always say it's the reverse engineering aspects. I mean, whoever is able to successfully duplicate one of these craft first, right? Whoever does it first, they're going to have power over all the other countries on this planet, right? So that's one of the reasons for the biggest reason for the cover-up. But maybe there's other aspects to this that we're not really thinking about. Like, for instance, once you tell the truth, right, then everyone's going to be asking questions about the aliens themselves. I mean, of course, reptilians, insectoids or whatever, grays, it's going to scare people. People aren't going to they're not going to want to talk about this because there's nothing the military can do about them. That's why they don't want to talk about it. And that's one of the reasons for this cover-up, perhaps, in this hypothesis that I'm presenting. I mean, the reason for the reverse engineering, or one of the reasons, is so we could combat these invaders. And and they probably still, to this day, after all of these decades, after 80 years, right, they still probably in the military have no clear idea what these beings are up to. That's very possible, and that is why they can't disclose the truth, because they're not going to be able to answer those questions. They're not going to be able to say, well, they're just here to check us out. They're studying us, the way we would study animals or sea life or something like that. They're not going to be able to say that. With all these reports of alien abductions, cattle mutilations, there's just so much. And then, of course, Men in Black, they probably have no control over this. They can't do anything about it to stop it. So that's why that's why some people in the Pentagon probably just say, yeah, it's just demons, because it's like a sour grapes kind of approach, because there's nothing else they could do. What else could they do? So if it seems like it's sorcery to them, so they just say, you know what, I think they're demons, so we can't even think about that. We can't worry ourselves with that. We'll just worry about Russia and China and other enemy countries, Iran. We'll put our concerns on those issues. We're not going to think about the aliens because there's nothing we can do about it anyway, and so they must be demons, because to me it looks like sorcery with the way they're able to fly around in their craft and whatnot. So that's what probably is going on here. Could be. Anyway, speaking of creatures, whenever I see new alleged alien, like, it's one thing when you see it, when someone presents you new UFO footage, it's like, it's like that line from Jaws. It's like, everyone says, huh, what? But when they show you alien creatures, that gets my attention. Then you're talking about a panic on the 4th of July, right? Just like the mayor said in Jaws, if you remember that line. I know that some of you probably know what I'm talking about. But anyway, Rob Heatherly of UFO Witnesses to UAP, he posted on Twitter a couple days ago, highly curious manifestation captured. And this was the video that he posted, and it's very strange. This being is, you see this light. Oh, let me rewind it here.
Sphere of light becomes ghost children. A video from a security camera on August 22 at 4:26 a.m. has sparked a wave of speculation on social media. The footage shows an orb of light moving over a dark field that bizarrely turns into the silhouette of two small humanoid figures resembling children. After a few seconds, the figures fade away. The video has gone viral, sparking debate about the possible existence of paranormal phenomena. While some users call it a chilling...
Okay. Now, this, according to this lady, this was from a channel in Mexico. I actually tried to contact that channel the other day, but I couldn't get through for some reason. I wanted to get more information about this. It was TV Azteca Bajijo. I was unable to get any talk to anybody there because there was no information about this. All they said was it was filmed by a security camera, and basically what you see in there, you see this light moving, like, and then all of a sudden it's like something appears along with the light, and it's like a figure. Now the lady talking said it looked like two children. I didn't see two children. I saw one figure that looked like an alien creature with big insectoid type eyes, and I'll get into that in a second here. I wrote actually on Twitter, I said, it doesn't look like two ghost children to me. It looks like a singular entity with two big bug eyes wearing something on its wrist that flashes just before it disappears. Think Tank from X wrote, it's an insect from another world. And I wrote, and it's wearing white clothes. Yeah, that's what it looked like to me. And I also wrote, okay, this is what I see. The moving light is apparently the only thing visible on this creature until it stops momentarily and then becomes visible. The light seems to be affixed on its belt. After a few seconds, a light flashes on its wrist, apparently triggering the cloak again. And I took this still image from it, and I wrote, in this blurry frame, it looks like your classic insectoid with two large black eyes. Did it realize it was being filmed and say, whoops, better turn the cloak back on? Now look at that. That's freaking weird, man. That is freaking weird. I mean, that to me looks like one singular being, and this looks like a head here, an alien head with two big black eyes right there, and then it just disappears. It shows up. It looks like something flashes on its wrist, and then it turns around and disappears again. Now, it's funny, when it starts walking away, it does to me for like a brief second there, it does look like it could be a person, like the back of a person's head, but I'm just not sure what I'm looking at. And the problem here, again, is that there's not much information to go along with this. This is one of my complaints about stuff like this. People post these things online, and this is from a security camera, but if it's from a security camera, how come it looks like someone's filming it with a cell phone and not a security camera? So this is like zooming in and everything, moving around. It looks like somebody filmed it with a cell phone. So I don't know. And it's so fuzzy, it's really hard to make out exactly what it is. I'd like to know where this media source from Mexico obtained this, because they don't really say, as far as I know. There's it actually originally was posted on TikTok. And it was in another language. Somebody actually before somebody used AI to decipher what the person was saying in English. When I played the one I played earlier, but this to me it's really
Un video
weird.
captado por una cámara de seguridad el pasado 22 de agosto a las 4:26 de la madrugada ha desatado una ola de especulación en redes sociales.
To me, that's not like a security
La grabación
camera.
muestra un orbe de luz moviéndose sobre un campo oscuro que de forma insólita parece transformarse en la silueta de dos figuras humanoides pequeñas, con apariencia de niños. Después de unos segundos, estas figuras se desvanecen.
I mean, look at it.
El video se ha
And then it just starts walking away. There's a flash on its wrist, and then it just starts walking away. I can't explain it. Again, I wish there was more information on this incident, because it does look pretty good, but at the same time, it could be a hoax of some kind. We really don't know. I really can't say. But I thought it looked interesting enough to talk about it here. I just wish that more people, when they present these things, including this media source from Mexico, I wish they would have provided more information than just saying, hey, yeah, this was captured on a security camera somewhere. I mean, where, when, what was the time, who did it, where did you get the information from, was there witnesses there that saw with their own eyes? That's the kind of stuff we need when these kinds of things happen. But obviously we don't get them. But this is all of this stuff. The creatures, the fact that there could be beings among us right now, up to God knows what. And that could be the reason why. I mean, you have all these people in the Pentagon. A lot of them are steeped in religion. According to people like Lou Elizondo, they say that there's people in the Pentagon who believe that these things are demons. What else could they say? Because there's nothing they could do about it. So I think that's what it is. It's just like a sour grapes kind of thing. You know what? There's nothing we could do about this, so we got to keep it quiet. We don't want to scare the populace, because there's nothing we could do about it anyway. If they were aliens, we would have been able to do something about this at this point, but we still can't. They're just always out of our grasp. We don't even know what these men in black are up to. There's just so many different aspects to this whole phenomenon that it makes it very difficult to disclose the truth as far as governments in the world are concerned. Because what are they going to tell you? I mean, a lot of people aren't like us. Like everybody has their own little interest. I mean, in addition to UFOs and aliens, I mean, I think about the Philadelphia Eagles all the time. I'm a big NFL fan. I don't come on here talking about that, but that's one of the things I think about a lot. I love old classic movies for some reason. That's another hobby I have. I have a lot of movies on Blu-ray, and but that's a different interest. And then there are other people who have, you know, interests like that, but they don't think about UFOs whatsoever. They don't even think about it at all. And if all of a sudden people from the government are going to tell you, hey, guess what? There's aliens here and we don't know what they're up to, and they never thought about this before, they never considered it before, it's going to be a shock to their system. And that is one of the reasons I believe that this cover-up continues, and why we're seeing this slow disclosure process, because as long as UFOs are in the news on a regular basis, a constant basis, over time, everyone's going to become more aware of the reality of this, and then it might be easier to swallow the pill. I'm just thinking that's what the disclosure people are thinking. I don't know. It's all guesswork. I just could tell you this. There are forces out there that do not want the Las Vegas alien evidence to be consumed by the world as a whole. I could tell you that right now, because they know it's real. Nobody could debunk it, right? It shows aliens. It's just, there's proof there. There is absolute proof there, as we talked about. So that's going to have to remain on the outskirts of this for a while, I guess. And there's nothing much I could do about it. I could keep talking about it here and there. What else could we do? There's nothing much we could do about it. And also, I just want to point this out. I also heard some, just with regard to that, I heard that initially, Ancient Aliens, I talked about this before, they're supposed to air in June, this month, the first episode of their new season, and that first episode was supposed to have the Vegas alien incident in there. But now I've learned that that's pushed back to the 10th episode. And I would not be surprised that if it gets completely pushed out, that they won't talk about it at all in Ancient Aliens. Because I'm telling you, there are people out there that are covering this up. They're trying to suppress it. They don't think the world is ready for this yet. And so the people who have been watching this podcast, as well as other podcasts around there that talk about this, you could consider yourself in a little tight circle here, a little tight group of people. There's not many people who understand the ramifications of that incident. And I think that's the way the governments of the world want to keep it for now. That's what it seems like to me, because there are most certainly efforts ongoing right now to suppress this story. I could tell you that for a fact. Anyway, I just want to say this. I want to say thank you all for joining me today. Until next time.